The Empire had been conquering worlds for more than 50 years. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black like deep space, and their teeth were sharp like knives. They had taken over 17 star systems. They had destroyed armies. They had crushed rebellions. Nobody in the galaxy could stop them. Commander stood on the bridge of his warship, the Iron Claw. He was looking at a small blue and green planet through the large window. His ship was the biggest in the fleet. It carried 10,000 soldiers. Behind his ship, 6 smaller warships followed like hungry wolves. "What do we know about this world?" asked. His voice was deep and cold. A young officer named walked forward with a data screen in his hands. He was nervous. Everyone was nervous around Commander. The commander had killed officers for bringing him bad news before. "The planet is called Harvest 7, sir," said. "It is a human farming colony. They grow food here. Wheat, corn, vegetables. They also raise animals. The population is about 12,000 humans." Made a clicking sound with his mouth. It was his way of laughing. 12,000 farmers. This will be easy." "Yes, sir. Our scanners show no military ships in orbit, no defense platforms, no weapons systems of any kind. The biggest building on the planet is a grain storage facility." "What about soldiers, police, any armed forces?" Checked his screen again. "We detect small arms only, sir. Hunting rifles, basic civilian weapons, nothing that could hurt our troops. The humans here appear to have no military training at all." Turned to look at his officers. There were 12 of them standing in a line, waiting for his orders. They were all experienced warriors. They had helped him conquer many worlds. "The humans are a strange species," said. "They spread across the galaxy like insects. They build their little colonies everywhere, but they never protect them properly. It is like they want us to take their worlds." One of his officers, a female named, stepped forward. "Sir, why do we even bother with this planet? It is just farms. There is nothing valuable here." "Everything is valuable," replied. "The food they grow will feed our armies. The humans themselves will work in our mines. And every world we take sends a message to the rest of the galaxy. The Empire cannot be stopped." He turned back to the window. The planet below looked peaceful. He could see green fields and blue oceans. White clouds floated across the sky. It looked like a nice place to live. Soon it would belong to him. "Prepare the landing ships," he ordered. "We will take this world before dinner." On the surface of Harvest 7, a man named Jake was working in his field. He was 42 years old with strong arms and a weathered face. The sun had darkened his skin over years of outdoor work. He wore simple clothes, blue pants and a brown shirt, both covered in dirt from the soil. Jake had been a farmer his whole life, or at least that was what everyone thought. He owned 200 acres of land. He grew wheat and corn. He had a small house with a red roof and a barn where he kept his equipment. From the outside, he looked like any other farmer on Harvest 7. His wife, Lisa, walked out of the house and stood on the porch. She was a tall woman with dark hair and green eyes. She was carrying 2 glasses of cold water. "Jake," she called out, "come take a break, it is too hot to work." Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked toward the house. He took one of the glasses and drank half of it in one gulp. The water was cold and felt good going down his throat. "Thanks," he said. "I wanted to finish the North Field today, but maybe you are right." Lisa was not looking at him. She was looking up at the sky. Her face had changed. The smile was gone. Her eyes were focused on something far away. "Jake," she said quietly, "look." He turned and looked up. At first he saw nothing but blue sky and white clouds. Then he saw it. A dark shape was coming through the clouds, then another shape, then more. 7 large objects were falling through the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire behind them. "Those are not meteors," Lisa said. "No," Jake agreed, "they are not." Any other farmers would have panicked. They would have screamed. They would have run to find their children and hide in their basements, but Jake and Lisa did none of those things. They just stood there and watched the ships come down. Jake took another drink of water. How many do you count? 7 ships, 1 big one, 6 smaller ones. The big one is probably a command vessel. The others are escorts. Lisa nodded. That matches the fleet pattern we studied. Yes, it does. They stood in silence for a moment. Across the valley, Jake could see other farmers stopping their work. They were all looking up at the sky. They were all watching the ships descend. I will contact the others, Lisa said. She did not run. She walked calmly back into the house. Jake stayed on the porch. He finished his water and set the glass down on the railing. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication radio, the kind any farmer might carry, but it was much more than that. He pressed a button on the side. This is, we have incoming, 7 vessels, military configuration. All units should prepare for protocol threshold. A voice came back through the device. It was calm and professional. Copy that, all units are standing by. What is the enemy strength estimate? Jake looked at the ships again. They were getting closer. He could see their shapes now. The big one was at least a kilometer long. The smaller ones were still large enough to carry hundreds of soldiers each. Based on ship size, I estimate 3,000 to 5,000 ground troops. Standard invasion force for a colony this size. Understood. Central Command has been. Hold position and maintain cover until authorization is received. Copy. Jake put the device back in his pocket. He looked down at his hands. They were rough and dirty from farming, but they had not always been farmers' hands. Once, a long time ago, they had held weapons instead of tools. They had fought in battles that most humans did not even know about. Lisa came back outside. Everyone is in position. The children have been moved to the safe zones. All equipment is ready. Good. She stood next to him, and together they watched the alien ships come closer. The shadow of the largest vessel began to fall across the valley. It blocked out the sun and made everything dark and cold. They think we are just farmers, Lisa said. Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap. Yes, he said, they do. In the town of New Canton, the main settlement on Harvest 7, people were moving quickly but not running. They were going into buildings. They were closing doors. Within 10 minutes, the streets were completely empty. Not a single person could be seen anywhere. The ships landed in a large field just outside the town. Their engines burned the grass and left circles of black earth. Ramps lowered from the ships, and soldiers began marching out in neat lines. Commander was in the first group. He wanted to see this conquest himself. He stepped onto the soil of Harvest 7 and looked around at the empty buildings and silent streets. Where are all the humans? He asked. Nobody could answer him. The wind blew through the empty town. Somewhere a door creaked open and then closed again, but there was no other sound, no voices, no screaming, no crying children or begging adults. Just silence. Felt something cold in his stomach. It was not fear. Commanders of the Empire did not feel fear, but it was something close to it. Something was wrong here. Something was very wrong. Find them, he ordered. Find all of them now. His soldiers spread out into the town. They kicked open doors. They searched buildings. They looked in basements and attics and closets. They found nothing. The humans of Harvest 7 had disappeared like ghosts. And somewhere, hidden beneath the peaceful farms and quiet fields, Jake and 11,999 other soldiers were waiting for the order to attack. Commander walked through the empty streets of New Canton. His boots made loud sounds on the hard ground. Behind him, 50 of his best soldiers followed with their weapons ready, but there was nothing to shoot at. There was nobody to fight. The town was completely empty. Every building they checked was the same. The doors were unlocked. The lights were still on. Food was still sitting on tables, half eaten. It was like everyone had simply stood up and walked away in the middle of their day. "This makes no sense," said to himself. His second in command, a soldier named, walked up beside him, was old for a warrior. He had fought in more than 100 battles. He had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we have searched the entire town. There is no one here, not a single human." "That is impossible. There were 12,000 people on this planet. Where did they all go?" Shook his head. "I do not know, sir. We have checked the farms around the town as well. Empty. The animals are still in their pens. The machines are still in the fields, but the humans are gone." Walked to the center of the town. There was a large open square with a fountain in the middle. Water was still flowing from the fountain. Benches surrounded it where people would normally sit and talk, but today there was no one. He looked up at the sky. His ships were still in orbit above the planet. His sensors were still scanning everything. If the humans had tried to escape in ships, he would know. They had not left the planet. They were still here somewhere. "Underground," said suddenly. "They must have gone underground. Check for tunnels. Check for hidden doors. Check for anything that goes below the surface." Nodded and began giving orders through his communicator. Soldiers started searching more carefully. They knocked on floors listening for hollow sounds. They looked for unusual patterns in the ground. They scanned for heat signatures below the surface. Meanwhile, 60 meters below the town square, Jake sat in a command center that would have made Commander very surprised. The room was filled with screens and computers. Dozens of people sat at workstations, watching everything happening on the surface. "They are looking for entrances," one of the operators reported. "Northern team is getting close to access point 7. Jake nodded. "Seal it, make it look like solid rock." The operator pressed some buttons. On the surface, hidden doors slid shut and special materials made them look exactly like the ground around them. The soldiers walked right over the spot and noticed nothing. Lisa was standing next to Jake. She was watching a screen that showed the alien commander standing in the town square. "He is getting frustrated," she said. "Good, frustrated enemies make mistakes." A young man named Danny ran up to Jake. He was only 25 years old, but he was one of the best communications officers in the whole colony. Before he came to Harvest 7, he had worked for Earth Military Intelligence. "Sir, I am picking up their communications. They are using a standard encryption. It took me about 3 minutes to break it." Jake almost smiled. "What are they saying?" "The commander is confused. He keeps asking his officers where the humans went. Some of his soldiers are getting scared. They think this might be a trap." "Smart soldiers." "But the commander does not believe it. He thinks we are just hiding because we are afraid. He has ordered his men to keep searching." Jake looked at the screen showing the surface. Hundreds of alien soldiers were spreading out across the farms and fields. They were kicking down barn doors. They were looking inside grain silos. They were doing everything they could think of to find the missing humans. They were standing on top of them and did not even know it. The entire colony of Harvest 7 was built on a secret. 7 years ago, Earth had started a special program. They knew that eventually someone would come to take their colonies. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity was not strong enough to protect every world they had settled. So they created traps, fake colonies that looked weak and unprotected on the outside, but underneath the farms and towns there were military bases, weapons, trained soldiers, everything needed to destroy any enemy who was foolish enough to attack. Harvest 7 was one of these traps. Every single person on the planet was a trained soldier. The farmers were commandos. The shopkeepers were snipers. The teachers were demolition experts. Even the children had been trained in basic combat and evacuation procedures. They had waited 7 years for someone to come. They had farmed the land and raised animals and lived normal lives on the surface. But every day they trained. Every night they practiced. They knew that someday their peaceful life would end and their real mission would begin. That day had finally come. Back on the surface, Commander was running out of patience. He had been on this planet for 2 hours now, and he still had not found a single human. His soldiers were tired and confused. Some of them were starting to whisper that maybe they should leave. "No one leaves," announced over the communication system. "We will find these humans if we have to dig up every field on this planet." He walked into one of the larger buildings in town. It looked like a community center. Inside there were tables and chairs, a small stage and a kitchen area. Food was sitting on the counter, still fresh. "They were here recently," he said to. "Very recently. The food is not even cold." Picked up a sandwich and looked at it. "These humans are strange, sir. Why would they run but leave their food behind?" "Because they are cowards. They are hiding in holes like animals, hopping 'we will go away.'" But even as he said it, felt doubt in his mind. Something about this situation was not right. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen a colony act like this. Usually there was resistance. Usually there was fighting. Even the weakest species tried to defend their homes. But these humans had not fired a single shot. They had not shown themselves at all. They had simply vanished. His communicator beeped. It was a message from his ship in orbit. "Commander, this is the Iron Claw. We are detecting something strange." "What is it?" "There are energy readings coming from below the surface. Very faint, but they are there. It looks like there might be power systems underground." Felt his blood run cold. Power systems. What kind of power systems would farmers have underground? "Unknown, sir. The readings are too deep for our scanners to get clear information, but whatever is down there, it is using a lot of energy." In the command center below, Jake heard this communication through Danny's intercepts. "They found our power signature," Danny said. "I thought we had that shielded." "We do," Jake replied, "but they are using better sensors than we expected. It does not matter. They know something is here, but they cannot find the way in." Lisa looked at him. "Should we request authorization to begin?" Jake thought about it. His orders were clear. He was supposed to wait until the enemy was fully committed before attacking. He needed to make sure there was no way for them to escape, but the aliens were getting suspicious. If he waited too long, they might call for reinforcements. He pressed a button on his console. "Harvest 7 actual to Overwatch. The enemy is on the ground. All of their troops appear to be deployed. They are searching for us but have not found any entrances. Requesting authorization for protocol threshold." The response came back immediately. "Overwatch to Harvest 7 actual. Authorization granted. You are cleared for protocol threshold. Make them remember this day." Jake stood up. He looked around the command center at all the men and women who had been waiting for this moment for 7 years. They had lived as farmers, but they were about to die as soldiers. Or, if they did their jobs right, the aliens would die instead. "All units, this is, we have authorization. Protocol threshold is active. Begin phase 1 in 3 minutes. Across the underground complex, soldiers began moving to their positions. Weapons were loaded. Vehicles were started. Hidden doors were unlocked and prepared to open. The peaceful farmers of Harvest 7 were about to show the Empire what they really were. Lisa picked up her rifle and checked the ammunition. This is going to be fun. Jake picked up his own weapon. It was a large gun that fired explosive rounds. 1 shot could destroy a troop transport. 2 shots could bring down a small building. "Remember your training," he said to everyone in the room. "Fast and hard. Give them no time to react. By the time they understand what is happening, it should already be over." He looked at the screen one last time. Commander was still walking through the town, looking for humans to conquer. He had no idea that in less than 3 minutes, His entire invasion force was going to be destroyed. "May they rest in peace," Jake said quietly. Lisa looked at him. "Will you really feel sorry for them?" "No, not really." The clock counted down. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. And then the ground began to shake. The ground exploded. All across Harvest 7, what had looked like normal farm buildings suddenly changed. Barn roofs flew off and crashed to the ground. Grain silos split open down the middle. Storage buildings crumbled to reveal the metal structures hidden inside them. From these hidden places, weapons emerged. Large guns on rotating platforms rose up from the broken buildings. Missile launchers pointed their deadly tubes at the sky. Energy cannons hummed with power as they charged up for their first shots. Commander was standing in the middle of the town square when it happened. He heard the explosions and looked around in shock. He could not understand what he was seeing. "What is happening?" he shouted into his communicator. "Report, what is happening?" His soldiers were screaming. Voices came through the communication channel, one on top of another. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack." Where did these weapons come from? They were not here before. "I need backup. I need backup at Sector 7. They are coming out of the ground. The humans are coming out of the ground." Watched as doors opened in the earth itself. Hidden entrances that his soldiers had walked over without noticing. Humans were pouring out of these entrances, but they did not look like farmers anymore. They wore gray and black combat armor. They carried weapons that had never seen before. They moved in perfect formation, covering each other as they advanced. These were not scared civilians. These were trained soldiers. And they were everywhere. The first wave of human troops hit the positions before anyone could react. Jake led a team of 20 soldiers through the streets of New Canton. They moved fast and quiet, like wolves hunting prey. A group of 5 soldiers was standing near a building, still confused about what was happening. Jake raised his hand and made a signal. His team fanned out and opened fire at the same time. The 5 aliens fell to the ground before they could even lift their weapons. "Move to the next position," Jake ordered. "Do not stop moving." Lisa was leading her own team on the other side of town. She was crouched behind a wall, looking at a troop transport. There were about 30 enemy soldiers gathered around it, trying to get organized. "This is 2, she said into her communicator. "I have a large group at Grid 4, requesting fire support." "Fire support confirmed. Get clear in 5 seconds." Lisa waved her team back. They ran behind a building and pressed themselves against the wall. 5 seconds later, a missile screamed down from somewhere above. It hit the troop transport directly. The explosion was huge. The ground shook. Fire and smoke rose into the air. When Lisa looked again, there was nothing left but burning metal and bodies. "Confirmed hit," she reported. "Moving to next objective." Across the colony, similar scenes were happening everywhere. The soldiers had expected to fight farmers with hunting rifles. Instead, they were facing a fully equipped military force with superior weapons and perfect knowledge of the terrain. The humans knew every building. They knew every street. They knew where every rock and tree was located. They had been living here for 7 years, and they had used that time to plan for exactly this moment. They knew nothing. They did not know the layout of the town. They did not know where the attacks were coming from. They did not even know how many enemies they were fighting. Commander tried to organize his troops, but it was impossible. His communication channels were full of screaming and static. His officers were dying one by one. Every time he gave an order, the soldiers he was speaking to would fall silent before they could respond. "Fall back," he finally shouted. "All units fall back to the landing zone." He started running toward his ships. If he could get back to orbit, he could use the Iron Claw's weapons to destroy everything on the surface. It would kill his remaining soldiers too, but at this point, they were already dead. He just wanted to make sure these humans died with them. He never made it to his ship. A woman stepped out of a doorway in front of him. She was not tall, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had killed many enemies before. In her hands was a rifle pointed directly at his chest. "Going somewhere, Commander?" Lisa asked. Raised his weapon, but Lisa was faster. She fired once. The shot hit his right arm and he dropped his gun. She fired again, hitting his leg. He fell to the ground, screaming in pain. "I am just a farmer," Lisa said, standing over him. "We are all just farmers here." She hit him in the head with the back of her rifle, and he stopped moving. In the skis above Harvest 7, the Iron Claw and its escort ships were also under attack. The missile launchers on the ground were firing at them constantly. The ship's shields were holding, but they were taking damage. Captain was in command of the Iron Claw while was on the surface. She was watching the battle on her screens with growing horror. "How is this possible?" she asked no one in particular. "They were supposed to be farmers." "Ma'am, we are receiving reports from the surface. Commander is down. More than half of our ground forces have been eliminated." "In how long?" 7 minutes, ma'am. This all started 7 minutes ago." Could not believe it. 3,000 soldiers, some of the best in the military, destroyed in 7 minutes. By farmers. "Prepare orbital bombardment," she ordered. "If we cannot have this planet, no one will." "Yes, ma'am, charging main weapons." The Iron Claw's massive cannons began to glow with energy. They were powerful enough to destroy cities. One shot could turn everything within 10 kilometers into a smoking crater. But on the ground, Jake was watching his screens. He saw the energy building in the enemy ship. "Danny, are they doing what I think they are doing?" Danny checked his readings. "Yes, sir. They are charging their main weapons. They are going to bomb us from orbit." Jake pressed a button on his console. "Overwatch, this is Harvest 7 Actual. The enemy is preparing orbital bombardment, requesting fleet intervention." The response came back in a calm voice. "Understood, Harvest 7 Actual. The cavalry is on the way. Just hold on for 2 more minutes." Jake looked at Lisa on his screen. She was securing the captured commander and did not know that a weapon capable of destroying the entire colony was pointed at her head. 2 minutes, he whispered. "We just need 2 minutes." On the Iron Claw, Captain was about to give the order to fire when her sensor officer started shouting. Captain, we have contacts, multiple contacts. Ships are coming out of faster than light travel." "Reinforcements. We did not call for reinforcements." "They are not ours, ma'am. They are human ships." Spun around to look at the main screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. Ships were appearing all around her fleet, dozens of them. They were coming out of nowhere, materializing from the blackness of space like ghosts, and they were not the small, weak vessels they had encountered before. These were warships, real warships, with sleek hulls and massive weapons and shields that glowed with power. They surrounded the fleet in a perfect circle, cutting off all escape routes. "Impossible," whispered. "The humans do not have a fleet like this." But they did. They had just kept it hidden, like everything else about them. A voice came over the communication channel. It was a human woman, and she sounded completely calm, like she was ordering coffee instead of commanding a fleet of warships. "This is Admiral Kate of the United Earth Defense Force. You have attacked a protected human colony. You have exactly 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction." Captain stared at the screen. She counted the human ships. There were 47 of them, and more were still arriving. 30 seconds, repeated. "I suggest you use them wisely." Looked at her weapons officer. The main cannons were fully charged. She could still fire. She could still destroy the colony below. It would be her final act of war. For a moment, she considered it. Then she looked at the human ships again. They were pointing every weapon they had at her fleet. If she fired, they would destroy her before the shot even reached the planet. "Power down weapons," she said quietly. "All ships power down weapons." On the surface, Jake watched the ships go dark on his screen. The danger was over. The enemy had surrendered. He sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. All around him, his people were cheering. They had won. After 7 years of waiting, they had finally done what they were created to do. They had made the enemy pay for attacking humans. Admiral Kate stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Spirit of Earth. She was 53 years old with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her uniform was clean and simple, without any fancy decorations. She did not need medals to prove what she was. She watched the fleet on her screens. Their weapons were powered down. Their engines were idle. They were sitting in space like broken toys, waiting to see what would happen next. "All ships report ready, ma'am," her first officer said. A man named Chris stood beside her. He was young for his rank, only 34, but he was one of the officers in the entire fleet. "Good, begin boarding operations. I want every one of those ships secured within the hour." "Yes, ma'am." Chris began giving orders. Across the fleet, shuttle craft launched from human ships and flew toward the vessels. Each shuttle carried a team of Marines in heavy combat armor. They were trained for exactly this kind of operation. Watch them go. She felt no joy in this victory. She never did. War was not something to celebrate, it was something to survive. Her communication officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we are receiving a signal from the flagship. Their captain wants to speak with you." "Put her through." The screen in front of changed. It now showed the face of Captain. The looked tired and scared. Her gray skin was pale and her 4 arms were hanging at her sides like she had given up. "Admiral said, I have ordered my ships to stand down. We are not resisting." "I noticed. That was a wise decision." "I have one request. Please let me know what happened to Commander. He was on the surface." Looked at another screen. It showed a live feed from the planet below. Prisoners were being gathered in the town square. Among them, she could see a large alien being carried on a stretcher. "Your commander is alive," said. "He was wounded during the fighting, but he will survive. He is now a prisoner of the United Earth Forces." Closed her eyes for a moment. "Thank you for telling me." "You will join him soon. All of your people will be taken prisoner. You will be treated fairly. We do not torture or kill prisoners of war." "That is more than we would have given you." "I know." The communication ended. Turned to Chris, who was watching her with a curious expression. "You could have destroyed them," he said. "When they were charging their weapons to bomb the colony, you had the shot." "I know. But you gave them a chance to surrender instead." "Yes." Chris did not ask why. He had served with long enough to understand. She believed in giving enemies a choice. Most of the time, they made the wrong choice and died anyway. But sometimes, like today, they surprised her. On the surface of Harvest 7, Jake walked through the streets of New Canton. The battle was over, but the signs of fighting were everywhere. Buildings had holes in their walls. Ground vehicles were overturned and burning. Bodies of soldiers lay where they had fallen. Human medics were moving among the bodies, checking for survivors. Even though these aliens had come to conquer them, the humans still offered medical care to the wounded. It was part of who they were. Lisa walked up to Jake. She had blood on her armor, but it was not hers. She looked tired but satisfied. "Final count is in," she said. "We lost 12 people, 12 out of 12,000. Jake nodded slowly. 12 was still too many. Every one of those people had been his friend, his neighbor, someone he had eaten dinner with and laughed with over the past 7 years. "And the enemy?" he asked. 2,847 dead, 153 wounded. All the rest surrendered when their fleet gave up. "So we got almost all of them." Yes, the training paid off. Jake looked around at his people. They were still wearing their combat armor, but some of them had started cleaning up already. They were moving rubble. They were putting out fires. They were doing what humans always did after a disaster. They were rebuilding. "What happens now?" Lisa asked. Jake pointed at the sky. Through the smoke and clouds, they could see the shapes of human warships in orbit. The Spirit of Earth was the largest, but there were many others around it. Now the Admiral takes over. The prisoners will be transported off-planet. There will be a trial, and the Empire will have to explain to the rest of the galaxy what happened here. "Do you think they will try again, send a bigger fleet?" Jake shook his head. "No, that is the point of colonies like ours. We are not just here to win one battle. We are here to send a message, attack humans, and this is what happens, every single time." Danny came running up to them. He was still carrying his communication equipment and looked excited about something. "Sir, you need to hear this. Admiral is about to make a broadcast. It is going out to the whole galaxy." Jake and Lisa followed Danny to the command center. The screens had been turned back on and everyone was gathering to watch. On the main screen, Admiral was standing in front of a camera. Behind her, they could see the captured ships. "This message is being broadcast to every species in the known galaxy," began. "Today, the Empire attacked a human colony called Harvest 7. They brought 7 warships and 3,000 soldiers. They expected to find 12,000 helpless farmers." The image on the screen changed. It showed footage from the battle, soldiers being cut down by human weapons, alien ships surrounded by the human fleet, commander being dragged away as a prisoner. They were wrong. Every human on Harvest 7 was a trained soldier. Every building hid weapons and equipment. The lost nearly 3,000 troops in less than 10 minutes. Their entire fleet has been captured or destroyed. The footage ended and appeared on screen again. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold. "For too long, the species of this galaxy have looked at humanity and seen weakness. They have seen our colonies and thought we were easy targets. They have attacked our worlds and killed our people without fear of punishment." She leaned forward slightly. "Those days are over." In the command center, Jake and his people watched in silence. They had spent 7 years preparing for this moment, not just the battle, but what would come after. The message that humanity was about to send to every alien civilization in existence. "Harvest 7 is not unique," continued. "There are dozens of colonies like it across human space. Some of them look like mining outposts. Some look like research stations. Some look like tourist destinations. You will never know which ones are real and which ones are traps." She paused to let that sink in. "But I will tell you this. Every human colony, whether it has a secret military base or not, is protected by the United Earth Defense Force. We have fleets stationed throughout the galaxy. We can reach any human world within hours. If you attack us, we will find you, and we will destroy you." The screen showed the captured commanders. They were lined up in a row, their hands bound, their eyes looking at the ground. They looked broken and defeated. "The Empire will answer for its crimes," said. "Its leaders will face trial. Its military will be reduced to a size that can never threaten another species. And it will pay compensation to every world it has conquered over the past 50 years. She looked directly into the camera. "We do not want war. Humanity has always believed in peace and cooperation. We have offered friendship to every species we have encountered. But friendship is not weakness. Peace is not submission. And we will never, ever let another species think that they can attack us without consequences." The message continued for several more minutes, explained the terms of the surrender. She talked about the new treaties that would be created. She invited other species to begin diplomatic talks with Earth. But the real message had already been delivered. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. and anyone who made the mistake of attacking them would regret it for the rest of their very short lives. When the broadcast ended, Jake turned off the screen. He looked around at his people. They were tired. They were dirty. Some of them were crying for the friends they had lost. But they were also proud. They had done something important today. They had changed the galaxy. "All right, everyone," Jake said. "The war is over. Now we have to figure out what to do with our lives." Lisa smiled at him. "I thought we were farmers." Jake laughed. It was the first real laugh he had allowed himself in years. "Yeah," he said, "I guess we are. Let us go plant something." 3 months had passed since the Battle of Harvest 7. The galaxy was still talking about it. News channels on 100 different worlds showed the footage again and again. Analysts and politicians and military experts tried to explain what had happened and what it meant. But the truth was simple. Humanity had shown the galaxy who they really were, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. On the home world, the High Council gathered in their great hall. It was a huge room made of black stone, with tall windows that looked out over the capital city. For 50 years, this room had been the heart of a great empire. Now it felt like a tomb. Supreme Leader sat at the head of the table. He was old, even by standards. His gray skin had darkened with age, and his 4 arms were thin and weak. He had ruled the empire for 30 years, and in all that time he had never known defeat. Until now. "They have released the full terms," his advisor said. A young female named placed a document on the table in front of him. "The humans are demanding everything we took, every planet, every resource, every slave." Picked up the document and read it slowly. His hands were shaking. "They want us to pay for the reconstruction of 17 star systems," he said. "They want us to reduce our fleet to 100 ships. They want us to open our borders to human inspectors." "Yes, Supreme Leader." "And if we refuse?" Hesitated. Admiral was very clear about that. "If we refuse, the human fleet will come to our home world. They will not negotiate. They will not accept surrender. They will simply destroy us." Looked at the other council members. There were 12 of them, the most powerful in existence. They controlled armies and economies and billions of lives. But today, they looked like scared children. "We could fight," one of them said, a male named who commanded what was left of the military. "We still have ships. We still have soldiers. We could make them pay for every world they try to take back." "Could we win?" asked. Was silent for a long moment. "No, we could not win. The human technology is too advanced. Their tactics are too good, and they have something we do not have." "What?" "Unity. Every human we captured during the battle refused to give us information. They did not break under torture. They did not betray each other. They were willing to die rather than help us. We have never faced an enemy like that before." Closed his eyes. He remembered when the empire was young, when his grandfather had led the first great conquests. They had believed they were destined to rule the galaxy. They had believed no one could stop them. They had been wrong. "Sign the treaty," he said quietly. "Accept all of their terms." "Supreme Leader." "Do it. The empire will survive even if it is smaller. Our people will survive. That is all that matters now." The council voted. The treaty was signed. The great empire, conqueror of 17 star systems, officially surrendered to humanity. And across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. On a jungle world called Prime, the warriors put away their invasion plans. They had been preparing to attack a human mining colony for years. Now they burned those plans and pretended they had never existed. On the ice planet, the Crystalline Collective sent a diplomatic message to Earth. They had been hostile to humans for decades. Now they wanted to talk about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. In the dark spaces between stars, the Void Hunters turned their ships away from human territories. They were pirates and raiders, feared by a dozen species. But they were not stupid. They knew when prey was too dangerous to chase. One by one, the threats to humanity faded away. Not because humans had defeated them all, but because they had defeated one. And that one example was enough. On Harvest 7, life was slowly returning to normal. The damaged buildings were being repaired. The burned fields were being replanted. The colonists were going back to their regular routines. But things were different now. The secret was out. Everyone in the galaxy knew that Harvest 7 was a military base disguised as a farm. They knew that the peaceful farmers were actually elite soldiers. The deception was over. Jake stood in his field, looking at the young wheat growing in neat rows. The green plants moved gently in the wind. It was a peaceful scene, the kind of thing that had attracted him to farming in the first place. Lisa walked up beside him. She was wearing simple clothes again, just pants and a shirt, not armor. Her rifle was locked in a case under their bed. She hoped she would never have to use it again. "The Admiral sent a message," she said. "She wants to know if we are willing to relocate. They need people like us for a new colony in the sector." Another trap. Of course, they think they might still try something even after the example. They want to be ready. Jake thought about it. He looked at his field, at his house, at the life he had built over 7 years. It would be hard to leave it all behind. But this was what he had signed up for. This was his purpose. "What do you think?" he asked Lisa. She smiled. "I think I am getting tired of wheat. Maybe we could grow something different on the new planet." "Like what?" "I do not know. Apples, maybe. I always wanted to have an apple orchard." Jake laughed. "Apples, all right. Tell the Admiral we accept." That evening, they had a meeting with the other colonists. Not all of them were leaving. Some had decided to stay on Harvest 7 and continue their lives there. The planet would become a real farming colony now, with real farmers who were not secretly soldiers. But about half of the original 12,000 chose to relocate. They would go to the new colony and start the process all over again. Build farms, raise animals, wait for someone to attack. It was a strange life. Living every day like a normal person while knowing that at any moment you might have to become a warrior. But it was also a good life. They were protecting humanity. They were keeping their species safe. Danny was going to the new colony too. He was excited about it. Young people often were. "Do you think anyone will actually attack us there?" he asked Jake. "After what happened here, who would be stupid enough?" "There is always someone stupid," Jake replied. "That is why we will be ready." A year later, Jake and Lisa were standing on the porch of their new farmhouse. The planet was called New Hope, which Jake thought was a little too obvious. Their new farm was bigger than the old one, with rolling hills and a small river running through the property. And underneath the hills, hidden from view, was another military base. More weapons, more vehicles, more soldiers pretending to be farmers. Lisa was holding a basket of apples. The trees had grown faster than expected, and this was their first real harvest. The fruit was red and sweet, perfect for eating or making into pies. "You know," she said, "I could get used to this." Jake took an apple and bit into it. The juice ran down his chin, and he wiped it away with his sleeve. "It is not a bad life," he agreed. "Wake up, do some farming, wait for aliens to attack, destroy them completely, go back to farming. A simple life. The best kind." Above them, the sky was clear and blue. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Some of them still thought about attacking human colonies. Some of them still dreamed of conquest and empire. But none of them would ever look at a human farming colony the same way again. Because now they knew the truth. Humans were not weak, they were not helpless, they were not prey. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And they grew really good apples. The end.